course. So we have all passed out certain students. So when we call you up, if you can come kind of up front, I know it's really embarrassing, but if you can come up front and when you're called and be in front of the person that's reading, it'd be great. So start off with Bill.
Sure. I would love to honor Sophia Rosales.
She's coming. Aw. You can come with her. You can hang out.
Hey, Sophia.
Oh, he's over there.
That's my daughter's name too, by the way.
Watch your steps.
More special.
Yeah, go around.
Yeah.
Good stop, brother.
Okay. Okay. Sophia Rosales is a sweet, caring student to the teachers and peers who she works with on a regular basis. She shares and helps other children around her. She treats everyone with love and respect. When other children need help in the class, she gives them support and shows them the correct way. She shows empathy and concern for others' feelings. She is the kind to all her peers and teachers in the classroom. It is a joy to have Sophia in our classroom. And it's a joy to have you in Basalt.
Okay, let's see. Lexi Glenn. Let's see. Hi. Basalt High School junior Lexi Glenn has demonstrated an amazing capacity for compassion and kindness over the past month and a half. She has worked tirelessly alongside me to make the fundraiser for Anna Cunningham a success. Without her help, BHS would not have raised as much money as we have. Her compassion and kindness have been extraordinary during a time that she is struggling with her own emotions as she faces the approaching loss of her close friend. Lexi is truly a delight, and I can't think of a more deserving person of this recognition. This was written by Brent Hayes, your science teacher.
All right.
Max Lopez.
You might not be here. So actually, Bill has two.
Yeah.
Perfect.
There you go. Pass that down to Jen, please.
Let's try Milton Garcia. Come on, Milton. Yeah, come on over here.
Just watch out for all the cords.
Right.
Milton is a very sweet young boy who has grown to become generous and a supportive classmate. He has demonstrated to be caring and compassionate towards his peers. He is a cooperative child who will always follow directions and help others around him do the same. He is a good role model. It is a pleasure to have Milton in the classroom.
Watch the cords. Yeah.
Catherine Koch. Catherine is an extremely caring student. She is always willing to help others and work with anyone. She is very genuine and is a true friend. Her teachers love her positive attitude and wonderful smile.
Yeah.
Good job,
And I get Jim Raleigh. So Jim is an excellent example of a caring, considerate student. He is very helpful in the classroom and an excellent role model for other students. Jim can always be counted on to treat people with kindness and respect. Thanks. So if we have, first of all, everyone who got Student of the Month gets a free pool pass. And so your name will be on the pool pass, so it would be great. And then secondly, we have a proclamation tonight. If everyone could hang out while we do the proclamation, that would be really great. It's a proclamation honoring exemplary citizenship and recognizing an outstanding community member. And this is going to be really difficult because it's for Anna Cunningham. So I'm going to pass it around, see if we can all get through this.
Okay. However effective government may be in serving the needs of its citizens, the character of our town depends on the relationships of our citizens, families, friends, neighbors, and strengthening those bonds lies in the hearts of the people, individuals who participate to help create a living, thriving community. These citizens are the unrecognized, unsung heroes of our town, and the town of Basalt is honoring Anna Cunningham, a brave young woman, community member, student, and outstanding citizen in the town of Basalt.
Whereas Anna was diagnosed in March 2016 with a rare childhood cancer, Ewing's sarcoma. Since that time, Anna has fought hard, exhibiting extraordinary strength and courage. Anna embodies the values that Basaltians hold dear: respect, honesty, bright-spirited, optimism, and commitment. Friends describe Anna as the most kind, friendly, and loving person who at 16 years of age has gone through more battles than most people go through a lifetime. Anna radiates nothing but happiness and joy. She's an exceptional young woman.
Whereas Anna's teachers note that over the past 2 years, in the face of formidable challenges, Anna has remained calm and kind and persevered in extraordinary commitment to her schoolwork. She wants to be treated like everyone else, because to be treated otherwise would have made her stand out, and that is not her style. She has handled setbacks over the years, and it is right and fitting that such an individual, from whom we can all learn valuable lessons, be honored and
Whereas, as great testimony of her humility and selflessness, Anna's mom remembers that one of Anna's dreams is that no other child has to suffer from this disease. When she was first diagnosed, she said, 3 in a million kids get this. Well, I'm glad that it's me, so no other child had to have it. That so many teachers, students, and community members have stepped up to contribute and support the fight against cancer and Ewing sarcoma is testament to the powerful rallying cry that Anna has issued that will help fund childhood cancer research and may yield the breakthrough that saves others from this disease. Second to last.
So whereas the town of Basalt is most fortunate to have Anna Cunningham as a community member, the town of Basalt salutes the bravery and courage that Anna has exhibited in her fight against cancer. She's a model for family, friends, and peers. Anna epitomizes the spirit of Basalt. Anna has persevered courageously and proudly. Anna has inspired the Basalt and Basalt high school communities to come together, rallying behind a cause, and as a result, we all share a stronger sense of belonging. We are sincerely grateful to Anna Cunningham and hereby publicly acknowledge her many contributions to the community of Basalt, Colorado. Therefore, we, the Basalt Town Council, proclaim February 27, 2019 to be the Anna Cunningham Day, and further recognize that the town of Basalt is a far, far better place by the role model and deeds of Anna Cunningham. Thank you. So I didn't know if anyone wanted to say anything who is here on behalf of this. You don't have to, but if you want to, it's on TV and it's being streamed, so feel free to come on up. You can come up to a microphone and speak. Anyone?
Hi, my name's Debbie Braun, and Anna's been in our life. Oh, since my daughter McKinley was in 7th or 8th grade, they became fast friends. My daughter is out on Rotary Exchange right now in Germany and can't be with Anna here at the end. So she sent a text today that I would like to publicly read because she just wanted to give some love to her best friend. And I hope this is PG-13. Have you ever looked at someone in the eyes, not knowing who they were, and just knew that you were meant to be best friends? That's me and you, because I'm Mexican and you're my one and only. It's a little joke they had. You know I love you. You know that. Everyone knows that. Everyone may know that your favorite color is yellow, you love cats, and your favorite animals are sheep. But what people don't know about you is your favorite food is pasta. Your favorite song is Sweet But Psycho. Your favorite subject is anatomy. Dinner is your favorite meal of the day. Your favorite name is Patricia. Your favorite candies are Rolos. Your favorite things to do in your free time is watching Harry Potter. And your favorite word is hoe. Sorry. But I know that. I'll always know that. It's something that just comes easy, because you should know you're my sister, right? And you're my sister, always have been, always will be. I'm so sorry I can't be with you right now, Anna. I'm so sorry, but I'll always be with you, and I know you'll always be with me, because Anna, goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes, because those who love with their heart and soul, there's no such thing as separation, and I definitely love you with all my heart and soul. P.S. You're the good one, and I'll finally give that to you. Thank you for letting me read that.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you, and this is a very difficult thing, and tomorrow will be Anna Cunningham's day, so, in the town of Basalt. So, thank you all for coming, and for the students of the month, there'll be a picture outside, and otherwise, you're more than welcome to hang out for the rest of the council meeting, if you want.
Lexi, would you take this to her?
Yes.
So
Let me-
much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Lexi.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Let's talk.
Sure will.
Hello, hello. Still my
You can have it.
pen.
I don't use pens. I've been trying to get away from paper.
Yeah.
No, she's
I'm so dying to get away.
a special person. I'll tell you.
Nope.
Good job holding it together, team.
Yeah. That's holding it together. Not easy. No thanks, but it's. Okay. So, we're on the, well, where'd Pam go?
I think she's coming.
She coming back? We're all crying for you, Tim.
Yeah. 5 minutes earlier, you would have gotten past
You
the
would have
box
been
of
crying
next
too.
to. Exactly.
the consent agenda. It's the minutes of February 12, 2019, and resolution number 6, series 219, resolution of the Town Council of the Town approving an agreement, professional services with O'Gannon Associates to provide audit services for the 2018 calendar year. Are we okay with that being on the consent agenda?
Yes. Mayor, I move that the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Passed. Okay, next up is a call to the public. So, I don't see much public here, besides people who are here for the agenda, but if anyone wants to make a public comment for items not on the agenda, please do so. Don't see it. Okay, so the next up is positive comments and gratitudes about Basalt. I personally feel that what we just did before you guys showed up was an incredibly positive thing for the town of Basalt. It's an extremely sad thing, but what I've seen in the Basalt community is people really rallying around a cause, and really, you know, the amount of people that I see around with shaved heads is pretty impressive, and hopefully they raise a ton of money for, to really try to find a way to end Ewing sarcoma, because it seems pretty nasty. So that's my positive about Basalt. Anyone else?
I'd love to share, I got a text from a neighbor today who said, "Whoever's out there that fills up the potholes, you are an amazing leprechaun. Thank you so much for doing it." And so I want to give that out to Public Works for getting on top of our freeze-thaw cycle that is going strong this winter. I'm grateful for it, and I'm also grateful for their efforts in getting on top of that.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, mayor and council reports. Anyone comments? Anyone?
I met this last week with Ryan and Christy, and again, thank you so much for your integrity and stick-with-itness that you are providing to the town. It's phenomenal, and so grateful. I want to recognize. Yes.
Awesome. Anyone else? Bill?
Two things. Ryan and I joined Ann Scott and her board over at the library midweek last week. And they presented some of the research that they had done about the kinds of things that the community is looking for from their library. And we shared kind of the direction that we're headed and suggested that we communicate a little bit more frequently and actively. And so the suggestion after you took off, Ryan, was perhaps to invite the library in when it's appropriate and reasonable to do a presentation in the same way that our committees and the Basalt Chamber do, since they are a super important part of our community and they deliver some really great services. And so I'd like to suggest that we invite them when there is time free in the calendar, whenever that may be, to, again, exchange thoughts, views about what our library can do for us and what we can do for our library.
That work for everyone?
Yep.
Yeah.
Then the only other thing, we had our three of our state reps came up on Saturday morning and presented over at the library to what was a surprisingly large crowd, given it was a powder day with bluebird skies. But there were probably about 60 folks, which was awfully good. And they laid out kind of their strategies, which are fairly consistent. Many of them are looking at affordable housing, education, healthcare was a massive topic. Some were looking at environmental quality, water quality, quantity types of issues. And the three were, of course, Dylan Roberts, Kerry Donovan, and Julie McCluskey. And that was it was a good meeting, it was a good forum, and I really think I'm very appreciative that they came and shared their time on a Saturday morning. Of import, they did suggest that there were going to be changes forthcoming to Tabor and Gallagher, but they didn't elaborate. So maybe you all know more, but it'll be interesting to see if there is some whatever amendment of those, either of those two or both of those laws. That's it.
Great. Anyone else? Ryan?
Sure, just a couple of updates for you on a couple of the more weighty topics we've been dealing with at the staff level. First is the grant for flood mitigation. So that we are intending to bring back in front of this council on the 12th of March, so that we can have you take a look at both an IGA, between an intergovernmental agreement between the town and Eagle County that sets out expectations and roles and things like that, as well as signing ultimately the grant paperwork to accept the money from the federal government. And so I've got to give a lot of credit to Christy for, excuse me, working really hard to get all of that stuff in order, as well as Jeff, who's helped us greatly with IGA. There's a lot of moving parts to any federal grant, and this is no exception. So come back before you. Then just wanted to mention briefly, as it related to the Tabor issue, it's our intent to be able to get some new information, more information, and seeking feedback from the community on that issue. And we'll be looking to do that in the next week or so. So just trying to keep that communication up, but if there's been any perception of silence, it's just because here at Town Hall we've been working hard to try to get those, get the research finished so we can get something out to the community. So that'll be forthcoming. So
Great.
I'll leave it at that for tonight.
Okay. So, next up is a public hearing on the Basalt River Park application on behalf of the Roaring Fork Community Development Corporation. A Colorado nonprofit corporation made an application to develop 28 residential units, 3 commercial buildings, which are proposed to include 2 nonprofit facilities, a food and beverage operation, and associated improvements of the property, and on town-owned property adjacent to or near property commonly known as the Roaring Fork Community Development Corporation, the CDC. And so property development actions include rezoning community serving commercial, community serving sketch plan review, amendments to the community serving zone district, sketch plan subdivision, ESA and ESA reach and floodplain review. And tonight is an update by,
And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pause, Gary, because we're gonna put Bruce Kimmel on the phone, and so we wanna kinda set up everything before, so he's on the line, so give me a second.
Welcome to the audio conferencing center. Please enter a conference ID followed by pound. If you're the leader, please press star now.
Hey Bruce, are you there?
You're now joining the meeting.
Bruce, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, we're just gonna do a sound volume, check, cause everybody hear Bruce? Okay, so I think we're ready to start, James.
Okay, thank you. As Gary indicated, this is a continued public hearing on the River Park application submitted by Basalt River Park LLC and the Roaring Fork Community Development Corporation. Just as some background and a brief recap of the application process thus far, the applicant submitted an application to rezone the property to the community serving commercial zone district, as well as a sketch plan review for 28 residential units and to provide areas for an expanded art space, a visitor center, and a small food and beverage facility. The council reviewed the application and program and had some concerns. The applicant then held several work sessions to refine the program to include 23 residential units, as well as a makerspace and office area, and then land for the art base, as well as a community building, based on the site plan that you saw in December. And at that December meeting, The council directed staff to go into a financial review on the project and the concept. So that's where we are at this point. We have begun the financial review, and as we indicated, we have Bruce Kimmel on the phone this evening to give us a brief update on where we're at with that. Bruce, I'm going to go ahead and cue up your slideshow. Okay. Can you hear me?
Great, thanks, James.
Okay.
I can everyone hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Is it a little loud?
It might be a little loud. And Bruce, you get the rent-a-mayor tonight, so that's why you don't hear Jackie's voice.
Well, thanks everyone for having me. It's been a little while since I've last spoken with you, and I'm also looking forward to coming out and talking with you face-to-face and in more depth in a couple of weeks, hopefully. But what we want to do tonight is just give you more of an introduction to the analysis that we're doing. We're calling this the Phase 1 development analysis. Give you a preview of Phase 2 as well, and some of the, I think, key issues and elements that will require both more discussion and refinement as well as council direction should we make progress and keep going towards a development agreement with Basalt River Park. But what I first want to do, if you could go to the second slide, James, is give you just a really fast introduction to Allards, since it has been a couple of years since I've been there. As most of you know, we're independent municipal finance advisors. We only work for public and nonprofit entities. So even though we work on bond issues with underwriting firms and we work on development projects, working with commercial and housing developers and so on, our fiduciary duty is always to the public entities that we serve. We have offices in Denver, the Twin Cities, and Milwaukee, based in the Twin Cities, although I'm in Colorado fairly often. Our historical line of work is we're best known for our work in debt planning, issuance, and management on behalf of communities. But increasingly, we're working in non-bond spaces, including financial management, financial plans, utility rate studies, and things of that sort, and real estate development consulting, both as it relates to affordable housing or senior housing projects, as well as all sorts of commercial development. And I've been fortunate to work with the town of Basalt over the last 5 years or so on a variety of development projects. Moving on to the Phase 1 analysis. I don't know how many of you have seen the 2 or 3 page scope of work that I pulled together, but I tried to summarize that really briefly here on the next few slides. So, what we're doing here with Phase 1 is really trying to assess the project as it's currently proposed, look to see if it's substantially complete in its assumptions as to the budget, all the different components that are being proposed by Basalt River Park, and really drill down into the assumptions as well in terms of development costs, sales, future sales of the various components, the financing assumptions for construction, and all of the things that drive the developers' estimates of the return on investment that they would get from this project. What's also somewhat unique here is the level of, integration with a number of things that pertain to the town. One is the purchase of a portion of the RFCDC parcel, and you're well aware of that dynamic. But also improvements to Two Rivers Road, of course, improvements that you would be making to the eastern portion of the CDC parcel for open space purposes. And then finally also the community building, if and when and how that should come about. And there's others as well, but those are probably the biggest ones. So, we're looking at Basalt River Park's private development assumptions, but we're also wanting to make sure we're keeping track of all of the other elements that could come before the town as investment decisions, and or other forms of engagement in the project. And by project, the words are kind of imperfect in this case because projects, of course, refer specifically to River Park development, the residential and commercial uses that are being proposed, but also the intermingling and intertwining with those public spaces as well, both the road as well as the open space and so on. I won't read through all these bullet points here, but please stop me if you have any questions about any of them. And I guess, one way to think about potential town investment would be direct investment, such as purchasing a portion of the land, making some of those Two Rivers Road improvements, or indirect investment, such as, again, investing in the open space and or community building on the eastern portion of the parcel. Moving on to the second scope slide, what we're doing at this point is talking with both the developer and the town about some of these various cost categories that aren't, part of the specific development project, and testing which costs we want to put into the developer's pro forma to test what that does to the return on investment. In addition to perhaps tweaking or testing some of the developer's own assumptions on other fronts. And all of this is to the point of saying, okay, given our analysis and the key variables and how we think they stack up, is it reasonable to say there is a gap that would prevent the developer from doing all of the essential investments, both on-site and off-site themselves? And so that's sort of the end point of phase one, if you will, saying, is there a reasonable threshold for town engagement? What are the town's options for doing that? And just depending on what the town council wants to do, do we think that the project would then be complete and economically viable and ready to go? Because the last thing we want to do is suggest options for the town's participation or investment, and then still have the project not ready to go due to some other financial element. So it's really important that whatever we suggest for the town council's consideration is something that we're confident will work for the town and help get to an overall solution for the project to move forward. Then just really quickly at the bottom of this slide, phase two then, should we get the green light to keep moving forward in discussions as to how to make this all come together, we really want to dig into more of the town's cost-benefit analysis at that point. We know that you have many other potential ways to invest your financial capacity, whether that's on the eastern part of the CDC parcel, whether that's investing in childcare or affordable housing or what have you. And so it's really important for us to try to gauge, with the different options available to the town, what would be the near-term cost potentially, what would be the longer-term benefit, and try to get a sense of how this participation or investment or engagement would affect the town's ability to pursue some of its other priorities as well. We'll look at options again for how best to structure the town's engagement, ideally at the lowest practical cost to the town and with risk mitigation. And then finally, as you see fit, we would be available to help the town negotiate that development agreement with BRP. That's quite a bit ways down the road, but this would be after much dialogue and analysis to get to that point. So then going on, and please stop me again if you have questions, but I wanted to just give you a quick tour here of our analysis. There's quite a few pieces of material that we're looking at, both that have been provided by the developer that are in play with the town as well, and then from other sources. But we are sort of basing our analysis, or starting our analysis with the developer's budgets. Give me 1 second. The developer's budgets, the construction funding plans, what are the debt and equity assumptions, what are the assumptions regarding future sales of the different project components, and what are the developer's assumed town investment elements. From there, we're also talking directly with town staff about other possible investments, such as the cost to rebuild Two Rivers Road, to fully activate the entire parcel, we're looking at property and sales tax data to try to get a handle, looking ahead to that cost-benefit analysis and what development on this site could mean in terms of future town tax revenues, as well as other tax and fee revenues that could be generated from development. So we know that the developer is wanting the town to make some investments around the area. We also have to just get a good, reasonable handle on what kind of upside gain the town might have from seeing this area developed. And then we're also finally looking at a number of independent sources on development costs, benchmark rates of return, and other key variables. We do a lot of this kind of work, not only in Colorado, but in other parts of the country. And so myself and some of my colleagues are applying both written metrics and resources of our own experience to look at the assumptions that are put forth and what could maybe they are changing or tweaking and what seems reasonable and where do we go with that. So then in terms of the status and next steps on the next slide, so BRP has provided a pretty complete set of development budgets, their construction funding plans in terms of debt and equity, and then also assumptions regarding the sale of future components. One thing to note is that sort of to get to an apples-to-apples comparison, the developer has assumed that they would be selling the various components, whether it be the makerspace building or multifamily or the proposed river cabins, but that's not necessarily what they in fact intend to do. So one of the things we're doing is looking at the numbers as they might play out if the developer or affiliated party held on to those entities, whether it be the multifamily or the makerspace building or both, and just seeing if those make a material change to the viability or estimated viability of the project. So we can talk more about that in detail on the 12th, hopefully. But I just wanted to note that we're testing some alternative scenarios there. We've also had actually two really in-depth conversations with Tim Belinsky about his numbers, and he made some changes after the first discussion. We've now touched base again, and we'll be doing more discussions and poking and prodding at some of the assumptions. And also we're having a less detailed, more high-level discussion with town staff. We've had a number of discussions with Ryan and Susan and James about the project. We're not sharing the specific project information, the financials with town staff, but still sounding out some of the big assumptions and drivers of the pro forma to just make sure that I'm having that dialogue both at the developer level and the town staff level. So really then where we're at now is to have that next level of detail of analysis. We're driving towards the outcomes that I mentioned before that we're hoping to present to you on March 12th. We're striving for that date. And town staff is also doing some of their own ongoing background research as it relates to Two Rivers Road, open space, and things that are probably going to be more in the town's wheelhouse. So that will continue to be a parallel track, and we'll look to marry up the different avenues, if you will, as we get further along. So then finally, issues for further discussion and refinement. I tried to just sort of foreshadow or highlight, I think, what some of the big factors will be that we'll need to get our arms around and see how if we can get to agreement between the developer and the town. The first would be what is the overall cost of acquiring the CDC parcel, and what would be the proportionate shares borne by the private development versus the town based on square footage and perhaps other metrics. So, all of these are subject to further discussion and negotiation. That's a big part of the reason why we're doing this gap analysis, this phase one analysis, is to sort of gauge sort of a baseline need for town engagement or investment. And then, where we go with these specific possibilities is really subject to discussion and negotiation. But so parcel acquisition will be a big one, as will the allocation of costs for the Two Rivers Road improvements, whatever that scope ends up being, if it's a mill-in and overlay versus a full reconstruction, and with sidewalks and crossings and landscaping, you can see how the scope of that work could be pretty significant. Excuse me. The costs for open space and community building, we expect that the town will bear most, if not all, of the costs for improving its eastern portion of the open space, as I'm calling it, but the community building is an open question at this point, and it's really not something that we're actively considering as part of this phase 1 analysis, but I know that it will need to be part of the big picture cost benefit for the town, assuming we go forward to phase 2. Then a big one that I know has come up for discussion is when and how the town can expect to recoup some or hopefully more of its investment previously in infrastructure on the CDC parcel, primarily the infrastructure improvements that were funded with the town's 2014 bond issue. Another large one will be exactly how and when these other stakeholders are involved, whether it's the RFCDC as the current landowner, the art base, the Chamber of Commerce, and potentially other community organizations. Right now, this dynamic is sort of seen as one. The developer has presented his numbers with the assumption of this being, Basalt River Park / town discussion, and to get to a mutually acceptable solution, we may need to get creative in bringing some of these other stakeholders to the table too. And I don't have specific examples to share with you, but I just wanted to flag that as an avenue for discussion. Another thing that I know that we'll need to raise for you and to illustrate would be the funding mechanisms that would be available to the town for your potential investments. We're not making any assumptions at this point as to whether and how the town will be involved. We have more work to do, but it'll be critical for you to know, what are the routes that you could go down in terms of funding, whether that's cash from different town reserves or different forms of debt financing or others. So more to come on that. And then finally, I know that there are other town policy issues around here that are, could be interrelated, whether that's affordable housing, attainable housing, whether that's child care, whether that's office space for nonprofit entities. Clearly, open space is a huge priority for the town and its residents. So, and I know you've had many discussions over the years about the appropriate level of density and footprint here too. And I think it's important to note that, that's not necessarily 100% settled at this point either. So my emphasis here is really on the financial elements, but part of getting to a good solution might also be bringing in some of these policy-related objectives that the town has. So why don't I stop there? I welcome any questions or comments and any initial feedback or direction that you might have.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce. Did the staff want to add anything to it?
Do you want to add anything?
No, I think it'd be appropriate time to entertain comments of Bruce and then have applicant comments if you've got any at this point.
Okay.
Well, Bruce, thanks for your time and intro on that. As it relates to working on this, I think it's just important that the town, and I've served on boards and various business profession positions, and when you've got an auditor or a banker or an outsider that comes in as Bruce said, he's poking and prodding, so that's good. And he is bringing that level of expertise to this discussion that I think is important for you all and for the community to have as an outside set of eyes and expertise that he sees with other municipalities to work our way through the financial side of this. There's going to be some creative solutions that are going to probably come out of it. What we've been working on collectively for the last handful of months is to arrive at a density and a height and a scale and set of uses that we felt were good and worth pursuing now to balance in the financial side of the house, which is relevant. Otherwise, we simply can't pull it off. I think Bruce did a nice job of also framing that it's of high risk to the community if the project that we envision physically and has the right outcomes doesn't get built, because we're going to have a lot of things relying on that. We've talked about Art Base's position here, community building, and then these other more privately controlled components to the construction plan, but we just need to be able to pull it off. And this is that balancing effect now, and this is very common in the development arena. You have to go back and forth between the size, scale, and the uses and the values to those, and reconcile that to what will work on paper, on a spreadsheet, and on the ledger that the bankers are going to be looking at. We do have levers to use here. We've got variables to work with, and that's really where Bruce brings in a lot of expertise. I really look forward to hearing his thoughts as we get deeper into this. It's also highlighted, I think, as we've gotten into these discussions of just the historical backdrop to this that is weighty, and there's a huge amount of expectation and expectation about what this project can bear or what this project can deliver and bring to the community that I think we all need to be guarded about and careful about. We have, through the last set of meetings together, we've gotten this tighter, smaller, tighter, smaller. Well, those expectations that were in place that go back well before my time, I think we need to be careful about and still anticipating that some of those conditions can still come out of what is now less of a project. But we agreed that was less of a project was good. Now we have to also balance that with what the project can bear financially in the way of public amenities and public outcomes. I think those are my comments.
Okay.
Anything from you, Michael? Rich? Okay. Not at this point.
So staff would suggest asking any questions that you have of Bruce while we have him on the phone, and then taking public comments with the eye to be continuing the public hearing to March 12th for further conversation on the analysis that Bruce is doing.
Okay. So, I look at council. Any questions of Bruce right now? Anyone? No, Bill.
Hi, Bruce. This is Bill Infante, newly elected council member, or one of two newly elected council members. I'm kind of interested in the assumptions that you're looking at, and we've discussed these before. And I guess from my perspective, sitting as we are on a quasi-judicial panel, it appears to me that the development as currently proposed serves the interests and objectives of our town. It satisfies our strategy, the master plan. And so in that capacity and from the perspective of our mandate and authority, I think they've done a commendable job of delivering a project that will satisfy the town's regulatory and legal structures. And at the same time, I am interested in the assumptions and how you factor these into the model, and the assumptions of either the Art Base's ability to fund its own development, and then the other two big assumptions are assumptions about the town's acquisition of some or all of the residual parcel at the corner of Midland and Two Rivers, and the further assumption regarding Building A, because I think I would have to presume that conclusions about one or all of those three issues will affect the financial returns of the project as a whole. And so I'm curious how we are modeling that and what options we've considered in analyzing the project.
Well, you've packed a lot there. Let me try to break that down a little bit. So your question really illustrates the sort of intertwined nature of the private development proposal and the public investment that is likely to be necessary. As it relates to what the town will be investing, you've clearly got access to capital. So if the town, for instance, decided to invest X million dollars in acquiring the eastern portion of that CDC parcel and making improvements to it to open up the big V and entryway into the rest of the river park, and also if the town decided after, I'm guessing, much deliberation and discussion to build, to actually be the primary developer of a community building, it's clear to me as a bond advisor that you could certainly have a number of routes to do that. Now, the big question, of course, is how do you pay those bonds back? What are those repayment revenues, and how does that impact the town's ability to pursue other priorities as well? Similarly, if you were to use cash, whether it's post-cash or cash from your general fund or other pots of money, certainly you do have some reserves available, but they're not unlimited. It's, of course, a scarce resource with other demands on them as well. And so those are all elements that, while you certainly have the capacity to do any or all of those things, it comes at a price, and you really need to reconcile, your decisions on those investments to the rest of your priority list and to your overall fiscal capacity. And so I would expect to have many, many discussions, if the town wanted me to, with Ryan and with Christy about how do we reconcile all of this into the bigger picture and make sure that the town's overall financial viability remains strong and growing, and so on. So that's one part of it. The art base is a somewhat gray area. We haven't been asked to really look at the art base. Right now, the assumption is that the art base buys their land, basically just strictly a pro rata per square foot amount, and there's not a whole lot in the developer's proposal about that. But based on, I guess, depending on the council's direction, we certainly could, and at an appropriate time, start having more discussions with them and to try to gauge when and how that part of the development would come to fruition. As you might know, we worked with the town and with RMI. We've done some work as well looking at the Roaring Fork Conservancy's project, which I'm looking forward to seeing when I'm out there. I haven't seen that yet. And so we've had a number of, I think, successful engagements working with the town and its nonprofit partners, trying to make sure that the development plans hold water and are viable. We've also had some discussions in the last few years with TACA as well on behalf of the town. So, I guess that's sort of a to-be-determined area, Bill, but I think you're touching on some good examples of how certainly there's going to be a developer's rate of return that will be impacted by certain elements, but there's also the town's rate of return, and we'll need to do more work in really fleshing out what the town council needs to see and wants to see in that town rate of return analysis.
Okay, any other questions?
I'll follow up later.
Oh, sorry,
So
Jen.
Bruce, that dovetails, this is Jen Riffle. That dovetails fantastically into the question that I have is, for Basalt River Park not being a nonprofit partner, can you provide us the acceptable range of ROI that you are utilizing?
For a for-profit developer,
Correct.
is that, yeah, yes, Jen, we'll be definitely talking about that as it relates to the specific components. We would typically drill down and look at rates of return, not for an entire project like this, but really looking at the for-sale housing, the multifamily housing, both the market rate as well as the affordable housing, and then for the commercial space. And all of those have prospectively different ranges of rates of return. And you know, rate of return is not, there's no bright line litmus test for this. We've had a number of cases, including in mountain communities, where developers have said, you know, we're wanting to move forward with this project. We see this project as a way of preserving capital, and actually the straight up cash on cash return or internal rate of return isn't our primary objective. It's more, you know, doing something productive with our capital resources. And of course they want to make money, but they've been willing to do projects at what might be considered below market rates of return. That's not very common, but that does happen. And you know, at the same time, there's certainly many instances of where the developers are saying, no, we absolutely need to have you know, more middle to a higher range rate of return because of perhaps the untested nature of the development, perhaps you know, other risks that the developer perceives they're taking in construction or in selling the project or operating the project, as the case might be. And so you really see a wide range of development return objectives. I think what we'll be drilling down, just to summarize, what we'll be drilling down on is, it's all about the prospective risk and return, both for the developer and for the town. And we'll try to illustrate our interpretation of that risk and return, Jen, so that you can gauge why we think, if we think, for instance, the developer in this case might not be bearing a ton of risk, and I'm not saying that is the case, but if we say, you know, on a range, there's less risk here for the developer, then maybe it's appropriate to look at solutions that have, you know, still a strong rate of return, but on the medium to lower end of that range, versus if we think, gee, the developer really is taking substantial risk in a number of areas, and let's try to get our arms around those, then maybe giving them the capacity, the running room, the opportunity to have a higher rate of return would be appropriate. So we have to gauge that as well. And so there's really no sort of one litmus test of, you know, 12% or 10% or 8% that we can say is make or break. We'll have to drill down and get a little more granular, but we'll look forward to having that conversation.
Anyone? Did you want to follow up?
Well, I guess, yeah, Bruce, just to circle back around, I guess, you know, you've hit a little bit of the nail on the head for me in the sense of questioning the optimal use of public funds and whether the public resource should be invested to build, own, and operate what could otherwise be a commercial building built, owned, and operated by the private sector. It seems to me that the private sector is far better equipped to own and operate real estate that is sublet to restaurants than the public sector is. And if that building A is a critical part of the plan, same with the art base. I mean, the development loses an awful lot if we don't have the art base or the commercial building. But I would only argue that I think it is much more the scope and purview of the private sector to build, own, operate private functions, commercial operations, than it is for the public sector. So if we're assuming that the town is going to fund that construction through whatever source, that assumption might be founded on some pretty weak foundations. And so,
Yeah, that's a valid point, and we haven't made any assumptions one way or the other. I do work on many examples of public-private partnerships where you can see such a wide range of creative solutions, and I guess I wouldn't see it as either or. There could be an instance where if this rises to the level of importance for the town, and if there does seem to be a lack of private entities that are stepping forward to do this, you could, in theory, and I'm not advocating for this, but you could in theory see a solution where the town issues COPs or certificates of participation to build the facility, but then enters into a very robust lease arrangement with a private entity to actually have the responsibility of operating it, subleasing it to restaurants or whoever or event facilitators, whatever the case might be, and then making those payments back to the town to make the payments on the debt service. Again, I'm not saying that is a model the town should be comfortable with. We're far from that, but that is just one example of where you could take people's relative expertise, people's relative access to capital, and try to find a solution that is acceptable to the governing body. Ultimately, it's the council's call, of course, and you have to look at a potential investment in the context of all the other ways that you could leverage your either cash reserves or your borrowing capacity. But I look forward to delving into those different options. And the private sector is, coming up with more and more different ways of providing solutions. And so I look forward to seeing if there can be a private sector solution that meets the town's expectations and gets this kind of community building done.
Cool. Anyone else?
Final, Bruce, can I ask a favor? For the March 12th meeting, can we get your presentation ahead of time so that we can read through it? And we don't need to call you and ask you personal questions, but just so that we can review it ahead of time to have intelligent questions to ask.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Jen, Susan, I'll give Susan credit for this, has made it very clear that when we have a more substantive analysis that's ready to share, hopefully tonight's discussion was helpful in sort of laying the foundation. But once we are ready, and hopefully that will be before March 12th, that we do get that to you the week before. So that's clearly understood. We're right with you.
Thank you so much. And then as well, I know that there's certain things that the public are going to be very interested in that are the assumptions. And one of those is the amount Ellers is utilizing and the amount for refunding town investment on the land. So some of those just easy items that are public, if we can have those listed out, that would be so beneficial too.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you, Bruce. I'm going to open the public hearing at 7:10. Anyone from the public? There's really only one public. So, Bernie.
Thanks, Gary. Bernie Grauer. There's a lot here that we don't know, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about it, particularly what was the actual amount of the town's investment preparing the land that the RFCDC owns for development so that it could be safely developed. Because without the town's investment, the RFCDC and the developer would not be sitting here today. And past councils, I think, have made an ethical commitment that the town would get reimbursed to some extent for that investment. So that to me is key, along with, I think, past councils' commitment unequivocally that more land would be purchased for park, approximately 1 acre at the intersection of Midland and Two Rivers Road. So those are keys. I support this development because I think it brings forth vitality at a reasonable scale of development. And that's very important. I would say that, to me, is number one in the town's goals of moving ahead with its plans for the future, is to have a realistic and appropriate scaled commercial development on this parcel and provide a additional amount of space for the V. I would say we're facing some real challenges because we've found out that we over-withheld about $2.5 million, including penalties of taxes, and we won't know whether we have to refund that or not until November. Well, that would pretty much wipe out our reserves, our cash reserves. So where would we get money to further support this development if it's deemed necessary? Very difficult question to answer. My feeling is we won't have the answer till that November election. I believe this project, with the meeting our affordable housing guidelines, being the proper size and scale, and interjecting a variety of mixed uses, including nonprofit uses and small-scale apartments that millennials could afford, is worthy of some level of town financial support. So I simply encourage you to move ahead as rapidly as possible, and I believe that this project is worthy of the town's financial support.
Thank you, Bernie. Okay, anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for further comments or motion to continue.
Mayor, I move the town council continue the public hearing to March 12th, 2019.
Second? Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you all very much.
This evening.
Okey-dokey.
Cool. I'll give you a minute to clean up.
This came in during the meeting. Next item.
Hey, Sam, could you do me a favor, just unplug that from the wall, because every once in a while, something weird
You can sit down. Yes, Scott. Giving Jen a minute. Deanna Cunningham Day. We're thanking you.
We're thanking you. We're praising. That was the proclamation. Putting that together is really brilliant.
Cool. All right, next up is discussion on the third Roaring Fork Club event. We have Scott Gilbert from Habitat for Humanity, and I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, but I'll just give a preface that I also kind of facilitated this in some way to kind of have a discussion on this. So, Ryan.
Yeah, so I think we've got a just about 2-minute video that we'll want to watch. And do we want to do that at the beginning and then we can
Sure.
get into the discussion?
Sure.
It's really cool that the school district and Habitat for Humanity are coming together to help teachers have this opportunity and keep teachers in the valley with realistic home prices. So that's really cool that they're doing that for us, and in hopes that teachers will stay and be able to serve the students and the schools.
Living in the valley has changed a lot, and it's really pushed out a lot of us middle-income people and middle-income families, and apart from working 3 jobs, we would be able to stay in the valley here if we were not given this opportunity. I'm excited. I have a 13-year-old that I will have 50% of the time, and it's teaching her to, the independence. I did it on my own, filling out the paperwork, and it's great. I'm excited.
Just the fact that we get to be a part of a community project and build ourselves a home and help others build a home. Words can't really describe it. It's such a cool opportunity for us.
Everything. In a few words, everything. Yeah.
That didn't make me cry, Scott. It's a cool thing.
So on that note, Scott and I had a conversation after Gary and I spoke, and Scott had inquired with the town about using one of the events from the Roaring Fork Club's PUD that requires them to offer a portion of the club for 3 different events that could be held each year. Right now we have 2 events. We haven't used the 3rd event. And so that one is sitting out there, and there's been a few ideas on that over the years, but for this year it was going to go unused. And one perhaps wrinkle in Scott's plan is that part of the PUD language contemplates 2 of those events using the clubhouse with the greens and only 1 golf tournament. The 1 golf tournament is spoken for this year. We did just complete a process around the new year in December, and that has been awarded. And Scott has been in touch with the club, asking them about the possibility of being able to use the golf course for their event, and that will be something that the club will have to determine if they feel like that is something they can do. But here this evening, we really wanted to get some direction from council, and the idea is that all of the proceeds from the event would go towards the Basalt Vista project. So there was a reason for showing that. And with that, I think we could get a little input from Scott perhaps. I know that he's had some more recent conversations with the club, and he can fill us in on sort of what their perspective is. But after that, we'd love to hear from you all and just kind of thoughts on what to do next.
Thanks, Ryan. Good evening. Jen, I brought you a hat. I didn't know you'd be a step ahead of me. Pretty good. I've never seen you not in a hat. So, good evening. First of all, thanks for all the town's support and partnering on this project. I don't know, this has been sort of a dream come true, and it's coming true. It's happening fast, but not fast enough. So we greatly appreciate what the town has done, and that's been a relief of some of the fees early on, and then some participation in net zero. When we first came in front of you, the idea of net zero was not a concept until one of your council members, not here tonight, maybe by design, suggested we not put a gas line in and make it all electric. And I thought he was crazy. But within 45 days, we had support from the county, support from the town, support from Holy Cross, support from CORE, and next thing we know, we've got an all net zero community. And it's really funny because that's like a little cherry on top of a really big project, but for some people that buzz is really important. And Holy Cross sees it as a laboratory. NREL's gotten involved, and we're hoping to find out what's realistic in this day and age for all electric. We're making great progress on construction. I'll just bring 4 points. Since I've been here, and it's been a while, I felt like I was here every week, so I'm sure you're glad that I haven't been recently. All the utilities and roads are in, except for the street lights and a few speed bumps, which is amazing. We kind of got in just before the frost really hit, so now we have $3 million worth of improvements covered by snow, and there's no real sense anything has happened until early December when we started coming out of the ground. We now have 2 duplexes, fully dried in, fully framed, and in one of them, electric, plumbing, and the heating and cooling are all in, so it's really happening. And then, anytime you want to go for a tour, come swing a hammer. Happy to do that. I called the mayor this morning, and she said, I know, Amy keeps asking me, so I won't make a big move again, but you're welcome. So the partnership is working. What we found with the original concept and with net zero, people do what they can. I was over here last week with Tori Franks, who's the community development director of Eagle County, and I was walking the Forest Service parcel just up Frying Pan here that I've spent time there with Kathy Click. And Tori and I were chatting, and she said, it's interesting how each project, we work on different people do different things. And she said, Eagle County doesn't have much money, but they have water rights. And then they were able to contribute water rights to a project to make it happen, and it didn't cost them any money, and it happened. And tonight, sort of in that theme, I'm trying to ask for your support for this golf tournament, because it can mean to Habitat about $75,000 a year, which is ironically the gap per home. We projected about 70, 75. It's running at 85, but whatever, loss per home, which is fine. It's still early, and we'll get more efficient. And so we're hoping that we can use the golf tournament here in Basalt at the Roaring Fork Club and have it go straight to Basalt Vista. In full disclosure, I know I don't look like I am, but I'm a member of the Roaring Fork Club. I'm a member for about 17 years. I used to have a real job in corporate America, so I can almost afford it. So I have an ability to talk to Jeff regularly and talk to Greg Bryan, the pro, and we've done our tournament 13 times, twice as the charity classic, and we know how to run a tournament. So you're enabling us to do that as a minimal investment, but a big vote on your part, and we can turn that into real money. When other nonprofits come along and try and do it, it's just not the same ramp up. We've got 9,000 people in our database. We know who the golfers are. We know how to make it happen. So it's something we can confidently say what we will turn into cash. This year is a little complicated. The Roaring Fork Club, sort of always evolving, has decided no more outside events, which means they don't want to have any more weddings that close down the clubhouse and close down the facility, during June, July, and August. Well, when the powers that be decided no more outside events, they didn't realize that sweep of the rug meant we couldn't do our golf tournament, which is kind of like, it's not really an outside event. It's September 16th, in theory, is the slot we've used. It's the day before their closing member staff tournament. They're going to be doing irrigation this year. We're likely to get a 15-hole tournament after the members play in the morning. At 1 in the afternoon, it's not ideal, but we've done it twice at Aspen Glen, and there's no comparison. And the fact we're doing this project in Basalt Vista just makes it such a nice hand-in-hand tournament. Do it in Basalt, the benefits go to Basalt, it makes it easier for us to explain it. I think these hats actually came from the golf tournament last September. So the club's going through some evolution. It's sort of funny, they've asked me to sort of come to you, and if the council directs them to do it, they're happy to do it, because this third event hasn't been used. I don't know that they'll serve it up for golf for anybody else, quite frankly, because Jeff's letter was pretty clear. So we're just asking for your support, happy to answer any questions. I can tell you this, all the money goes right back into Basalt. You get a sense from the families how exciting it is for them. This is, Basalt, helping the Basalt project happen, something hopefully you all can do without any penalty, and, I'm happy to answer anything I can to make you feel great about it. We're excited where we are, and we're already on to trying to figure out the next project so we can be ready. And when I come back next time, it won't be in a rush like last time. Thank you.
Okay. Council, anyone?
Just real quick, we've never used this third.
We offered it to the Roaring Fork Conservancy and the Hope Center, and then they weren't, it was a bad snow year, and they ended up canceling the event, and the rescheduling didn't work out. So we want to convert it to community chest, but we're not ready this year because of the amount of legwork it takes to get there. So we haven't allocated the third event.
Anyone else? Good. Jim?
Just to be clear, this is a one-time ask for the year 2019, or are you asking for this third event indefinitely?
That wasn't my concept, but I'm open to that if you'd like. Yeah, we're just trying to handle 1 year at a time, quite frankly.
And so, just to clarify with staff, I know that sorry, it wasn't written down, and I think everyone understands that I'm a visual person, so I'm just trying to, thanks for bearing with me here, get the gears going here. That there are 3 events, only one of which is to be a golf tournament?
That's correct. Of the 3 events in the UD, they were required for one of those to be able to use the golf.
Okay.
One of those, that's now taken, but through Scott's discussions with the Roaring Fork Club, they seem amenable to offering that this year as a possibility for a second golf. So it would be our third, let's see if you could get this one, see if I can get this one. Our third event, but the second that would have golf, and that would normally not be permitted, or at least isn't contemplated in their requirements, their development requirements. So looks like there's an add-on.
Okay, and then just to clarify the mechanism for the other 2 events, those rotate yearly with who the recipient is, or is the Roaring Fork Conservancy always one of the recipients, and then the golf tournament gets what?
So the Basalt Education Foundation, they've had their annual event there for a number of years. So they've been a sort of a static recipient of that. One event that's not golf, that's just indoors in the clubhouse.
Right.
The second one has rotated. That's the golf tournament, and then this third one, I guess, really unused.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
Well, and I don't have anything clarifying. I just look at this as a way, I was kind of surprised when I found out we had 3 events and we weren't using the 3rd event. And when Scott, came to me and was like, could we potentially use it? And I talked to Ryan and we're not using it for this year. To me, I was like, and the fact that the Roaring Fork Club might give another golf tournament, because I feel that's a great way to raise pretty significant amounts of money. So I was definitely in favor of going forward and letting them have the 3rd event for 2019, and then kind of looking at what 2020 is and 2021 and see really where we're at with it, because in the end, we knew there was going to be a gap in funding, and Scott did promise that he was going to raise it all. So this is one of the ways that they could raise that money, so I'm supportive.
Yeah, I would only say we think very, very highly of Habitat's project, and since we already have an investment, anything we can do to further enhance the viability and the affordability of the project, I think we want to support.
Katie?
So our normal procedure is to have a public process in which people apply for the one golf tournament.
Mhm.
And this would be an exception in which it's not a public process. It's coming to Basalt Council and asking us to advocate for Habitat for Humanity to do a different type of non-public event, non-public process. I get all of that. And I have expressed in the past that I don't like these one-offs because I think it needs to be fair and open to the public. But I know that we're this isn't an exception, and I'm willing to move forward with that. But like you were describing, from moving forward, now that we know we have 3 events, that we make this accessible to all.
So what's the actual direction we need to give?
That's it.
Tonight's-
I mean, really,
Thumbs
truly,
up.
yeah.
Okay.
It wouldn't be bad to have a motion.
Yes.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, it's my understanding the staff is looking for direction on whether it's okay to allocate this 3rd event to the Habitat for Humanity. So you guys have all kind of provided that direction, but to memorialize it in motion would be fine. Mayor, I move that the town council award the 3rd available event to Habitat for Humanity for 2019.
Second. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
You don't get, you got it. What do you?
I want to say, first of all, 2 things. One, I want to say thank you, appreciate it. It's ironic, and I wish this weren't on camera because I don't want this to sound insincere. We've seen this project as 4 key partners: school district, Pitkin County, Town of Basalt, and Habitat. And everything we do, we try and include you. We look at on the video, you've seen as one of the 4 partners. And it's really nice that we could figure out an idea that wasn't planned that can enable the town to be able to do more to be part of this experience. Because I know, we're getting incredible attention on the western slope of Colorado, in the state of Colorado, and nationally. I get calls at least once a month from somebody that Carrie Mortgage has spoken to and said, you gotta call Scott Gilbert, what's going on in Basalt is fantastic. So we may not realize it's being seen, it's pretty cool. But since I'm here and I have a chance to say thank you, I'm gonna walk around and give you each a solar phone charger. Okay, and I have instructions in the bag because the original instructions from China said, don't put it in the sun, so I want to not have you get distracted by that. It's okay if it goes in the sun. And this is really emblematic of the partners on our project and the fact that it's a solar project. So I have them in the bag, I'll walk around. I just want to say thank you for everybody for your support, appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott. Okay.
Jen, do you need a backup hat or you're good?
I'm great, and I think that this is on the umbrella of what we can accept.
I was gonna say, what is our gifts policy?
Scott, if you'd like
Yeah.
to leave those, if you'd like to leave
50
those
bucks.
with Pam, and we can talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you'd like to leave those with Pam, we can talk about.
Yeah, I'm handing them out, okay?
So I'll let you guys deal with that piece of it.
Yeah, we'll follow up with Scott.
All right. Next up is the update and discussion on the tree farm application. I see James coming to the table. Okay, James.
Okay. Thank you. This is an Eagle County referral item on the tree farm final plat application for phase 1 of the tree farm development, as well as the tree farm applicant's request to phase the repayment of their reimbursement requirement for their share of the Willits underpass costs. As background, Eagle County approved the tree farm development preliminary plan in September of 2017, and it included approximately 500,000 square foot of development, including up to 340 dwelling units. The applicants have submitted their final plat application for phase 1 of the development in Eagle County. This is the proposed phase 1 portion. We've got Willits Town Center over here. This is Highway 82. And then this was the overall tree farm development. They are proposing a 2-week referral period to the town, which is what their Eagle County code mandates. The final platting process in Eagle County is more of an administrative type of process that reviews the plat at final for consistency with their preliminary plan reso conditions. Staff has provided a draft referral letter that you have in your packet for the council's consideration. It points out that the town had many kind of unresolved concerns at the preliminary plan stage with the items that were itemized in the December 2016 letter that was included in your packet and was also emailed out to you individually. It requests that the county make sure that all necessary CDOT permits are obtained, and that it also requires that they do the fiber optic installation to coordinate the street lights, traffic lights. That was also required of the Willits Town Center development by CDOT. And then regarding the phasing of the payment of the reimbursement that is being requested for the Willits underpass funding, the applicants are requesting to phase it such that they would pay first half of the almost $860,000 with their final plat application, and then they're requesting that they be able to pay the a quarter of that $860,000 when they get to CO on 200,000 square feet of development in the project, and then the final quarter of that 860,000 when they get to 400,000 square feet of development. The county's preliminary plan reso that they approved actually required that they pay almost basically all of the 860,000 at the time they file their final plat. So they're requesting some relief and phasing on that. Staff has come up with 4 options, and let me scroll down. For the council to consider, these are on the second page of your memo in the packet. One would be to provide comments supporting the tree farms reimbursement proposal for phasing. A second option would be to provide comments indicating that the town is not supportive or accepting of the phasing of the reimbursement. That's in your draft letter that you have in the packet. A third option would be to provide comments supporting phasing of the reimbursement, but proposing an alternative phasing scenario that would not quite be as flexible as the applicant's proposal, such as potentially requiring the first half of the funds at the final plat and the second half of the reimbursement prior to the issuance of the first CO, so that it would come in pretty quick timing. Or 4, you could negotiate with the developer for potential land use concessions that would alleviate concerns that the town had about competition with the town's commercial businesses. Staff was maybe potentially talking about if we provided support for the phasing of the reimbursement, that maybe they could provide a concession that they wouldn't have a grocery store allowance over there or other types of commercial businesses. So staff wanted to check in with council and see what kind of comments you may have on their reimbursement proposal, as well as the letter that staff has drafted.
Okay, thanks, James. So, we all read it. What do What do you think?
James, real quick, every time you're saying final plat throughout this is just the phase 1 final plat, correct?
It is the Phase 1 final plat. They would have to come back for a second phase final plat, but as I indicated, you know, it's kind of more of a administrative process. It's not like the town's final plat, where, you know, you kind of revisit the project for a third time. It's kind of just to see if they comply with the preliminary plan conditions, basically, and filing of a plat.
Anyone?
I have a question of clarification. What kind of money is it when the money comes back? Is it general funds or is it restricted in any way?
It goes back to, I think it would go back to I don't know, James, you want to answer?
I don't know that I have a clear answer on that either. We'd have to probably work through that. You know, I think the original funds were probably out of.
Willits Rita, so we
Willits
took
Rita.
funds for the towns from Willits Rita.
So that could potentially mean that it would go back into the Willits Rita for
Yeah,
other
I think
purposes.
it needs some more discussion about
Got
it.
it.
Because the money also gets allocated. Do you want to talk about that at all? It doesn't all come to the town of Basalt.
Yeah, RAFTA paid into it and also provided a loan to the town originally, so a portion of that would get reimbursed back to RAFTA as well.
So does RAFTA have to sign off on this too?
Well, we would consult with RAFTA, but we wanted to kind of get council's take on the repayment reimbursement plan that they're proposing first.
So in the plausible scenario that it does come back into the Willits Rita, remind me, what does the Willits Rita have to be used for? Is that to call?
Well, TACA gets separated out, so that money just gets separated out. The town share, you know, basically it's for capital improvements that benefit the Willits and Basalt area. It's been used in the past for the underpass, for the roundabout, for the East Valley Road traffic calming. Those are and some park benches, but those are the main capital improvements that we look for. So it doesn't necessarily have to be used just in Basalt, but we felt those improvements were really needed in Willits Town Center.
Anyone else? Jen?
I take a 2 or a 4 with a side of annexation into town. Just trying to make a little giggle there.
Made Pam giggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And we
So you're,
invited the applicants, but doesn't.
I don't see they showed up. I mean, my comment was if I was only thinking the only way I'd want to do it is if we negotiated with the developer for a land use concession. I was thinking of saying no commercial until the full amount was repaid. And, you know, I was just thinking of, that was one of our main concerns in the original application was the competition with Town of Basalt things, considering this wasn't going to be annexed. And to me, I look at it going, it was approved, it wasn't approved with most of our conditions, so they should just pay it back, or come and negotiate. And the land use concession I would like to see is a, you know, a restriction on all commercial until it's paid back. And if they have, you know, by the time they get to the last piece, you know, the last 200,000 square feet, you know, that's gonna be a long time from now, potentially. And they, in their emails, said they need to make the math work. And the way the math works is that we make concessions, and to me, time is money, because we've basically put the money in years ago to get the underpass, so that time money is passed, and so it's not gonna be worth as much today as it was worth back then, and it's definitely not gonna be worth as much 20 years from now, or 10 years from now, as then. And so I think, you know, we should get some concession for it. So that's what I've been thinking. I originally saw staff's recommendation about just food establishments, but I was like, all commercial, go with that. So that's kind of where I'm at. or I'm at just saying, pay it now.
Well said, Gary.
So anyone?
I guess the question that I was asking when you had stepped out was what color money is it? What does the money come back into? And Susan explained that it comes back into the Willits Rita.
Well, it may, we
Or it
probably
may.
need to do.
We have to look at that. So, I mean, frankly, if we have any discretion over how the Willits Rita money might be used, and if it could ever be dedicated to TACAW, which is encountering some new challenges, that would actually be an interesting option for us to explore. But having said that, do we know what they're proposing for the tree farm? Because my understanding was that it was all residential and a hotel. Are they talking about commercial now, or?
Well, I think they have flexibility with the commercial acreage that they do have. So a hotel, I've heard that as well. But I think they're fairly broad strokes as far as allowed uses in there.
Because this is precisely the point that we have actually discussed in the Finance Committee, the notion of the risk of our revenue streams in the event that there are threats derived from one or another source, like City Market down in Carbondale, or Trader Joe's, if ever that were to be the case, at the tree farm. And so I would suggest we probably do want to have a chat to secure that interest, to ensure that we are not at risk of losing the most significant stream of our revenues that we depend upon.
I like number 4 with the alleviate the commercial. I don't know if we can stop all their commercial, but also what about some stricter deed restricting on some of their buildings to help tackle our affordable housing issues? Because I know their words they're using are obtainable, affordable, and they're having the 1-month purchase period. Is there anything we can leverage on that for more permanent, locals only, or, I don't know.
Or deed restriction?
Yeah, like hard deed restrictions on a certain amount.
Katie?
Exactly what you said. I mean, if I had to make a decision tonight and the developer had no interest in negotiating significantly and seriously with us, for me, it's number 2, 100%. But if they want to come in and have a serious conversation, I'm willing to have that conversation.
Well, that's what we can put back at them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm okay with that. I mean, it's kind of saying number 4 or number 2. It's number 4, negotiate for land use concessions. I think you heard, between limiting the commercial or eliminating commercial until it's paid back, or some deed restriction on housings. So let's see, I would say put that out there. You guys okay with that?
And or both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And or both. Well, they would negotiate with us.
Yep.
So, okay. You got direction?
I think so. I think that's good.
We have direction on that piece. The rest of the letter, is the council accepting or have adjustments to the rest of the framework there?
The letter as drafted, which suggests payment upfront 100%, is overcome by Gary's suggestion that we engage them in some type of discussion, and subject to the outcome of that discussion, we would then be in a position to determine whether some phasing might be contemplated or not.
You okay with that? Because the rest of the
I
letter
am,
was,
yeah.
I'm good with the CDOT access
Okay.
permits and stuff like that. Is everyone, yeah, I think that's,
And the only reason I'm asking is we've got kind of a short time frame to get comments back. We'll certainly get back to them, but we may not be able to bring the discussion back to council before their comment deadline is up,
Okay.
so.
You want a motion, James?
That'd be helpful, I think, if we could.
So do you want a motion to approve the letter that's as amended?
As amended.
I motion that.
Second?
okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Side conversation, yes.
You had a conversation?
No.
She was distracting me.
Yes.
Don't distract Ryan. Come on.
It was
John.
actually the other
So Susan, you're up for the board and committee appointments.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna do that first, and
Yes.
actually,
It's gonna be easy, so.
yeah, I think that you could have a motion. The candidates were Abby Gerke to the Basalt Public Arts Commission, Katie Erickson to the Basalt Affordable Housing Commission, and Ann Baker also to the Basalt Affordable Housing Commission, and they would all be for 3-year terms.
Is there a
And we did
motion?
have, just
What-
for,
what about the
just
other
for
two?
clarity,
Yeah.
the other two
Right.
We'd bring
Come
back for-
still show, okay,
Yeah.
they
Well,
showed
unless you're
interest,
ready to
or
put
you
them on.
can.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
can we-
want kinda,
Mayor, I move that all the applicants that applied for the open seats be granted their 3-year terms for BPEC and
Clarification, did you mean the people that were?
everyone.
Including Rick Stevens and?
People that weren't here and
Yeah,
people that were
okay.
here.
Just want to be clear on the motion.
Mayor, I move that everyone that applied for the open positions on both BPAC and Bach be appointed.
Second.
any discussion?
So it's an interesting evolution of how we're going with the committees, and it is this moving target. And one thing that we did in the past that was very effective, that staff did take the time to write up our questions for applicants and having in-person interviews. In the case, we're not doing that here.
We did with some of them earlier.
Oh, during the work session?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
3 out of the 5.
Oh, okay,
2 weren't present.
okay.
So Ryan's motioning to approve all of them regardless of whether they showed up and were interviewed earlier tonight.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, I missed that. So nonetheless, what seemed to work great in the past was having a committee of counselors who took care of the interview process, so that it wasn't during a work session, or there was actual time to sit down and talk and then discuss, look at the strategic plan of where we're going, what background and knowledge, and then turn that back around to the applicants. And I felt that that was very effective. Here's an example of how I was out of the loop, but nonetheless, thank you, other counselors, for being here and taking care of that. So I would be game for, in the future, starting up the small committee and not doing it during council meetings or work sessions, et cetera.
But I think that's how it went.
No.
Didn't all of these candidates already interview with Bach and BPAC?
Bill, it used to be kind of like what we did for the golf tournament, where we had like a
Subcommittees.
subcommittee of 3 council members that would go and chat with them and interview them
And then bring a
and then make the
recommendation.
recommendation, yeah.
Okay, but if we
I
haven't
think we
been
should
doing
move, I like that for the future. But I mean, basically we have a motion and a second on it.
I'll just make one comment that, I mean, I understand that some people couldn't attend tonight, but I think it's nice that we expect people to show up and talk with us and not have this become a new precedent that you just send a letter and you don't ever have to show up and you don't have to talk to us. And I know that we're creating this subcommittee, so that we can be more accommodating to schedules. But, I mean, I think that, having a physical presence and putting that effort in and coming to talk to us is a critical component of this process.
Is it okay if I just add one thing? I agree. One clarification, I did have a conversation with Rick Stevens today, and he was not able to come because of a medical issue that he had in his family. So he did call and let us know and talk to me about it and said that there was still that interest. So,
Humberto said it was work.
Yep.
Related. So.
All right, so it sounds like we have an option to be more accommodating to schedules
Okay.
with these subcommittees.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Cool. So next is the selection of the Basalt Master Plan Consultant, and there's one random guy in the back.
Pick me up off the street, that's right. Thanks for approving the Habitat Golf Tournament, by the way. That's the most fun I have all year, without a question of a doubt.
Okay.
Okay, Susan. and
Okay, so what we have in front of us today is, we're looking for the council to recommend selecting CTA as the master plan consultant to prepare the master plan. What we would do after this is we would bring back on the consent agenda at the next meeting the resolution and the actual contract itself. I think the council's aware that kind of the impetus to do a new updated master plan came out of the P&Z, and the P&Z had a couple of work sessions with the town council. Town council saw the RFP, sent out the RFP in early December. We did our normal advertising, but we also reached out to a number of national organizations because the idea was to welcome invitation with local and kind of national firms. We had a pre-proposal meeting that was non-mandatory, but we actually filmed it and put it on Grassroots. So if you were a firm that wasn't local, that you could watch the pre-proposal meeting. The proposals were due at the end of January, and we received 10 proposals. One of those missed the deadline, and another one was an incomplete. So we kind of had a staff group plus the chair of the P&Z shortlist those. And then on February 11th, we interviewed 5 of those firms. And we, under the procurement code, the town manager is actually in charge of selecting the selection committee. And it was made up of 2 representatives of the P&Z, Bill Marin and Bernie Brower, 1 representative of Post, which was Cindy Bruce, and then 3 staff members, which were Ryan, James, and me. And so it was a big day. We interviewed all 5 firms, and in the end, based on the comments of all the committee members, we recommended that CTA be the firm that was selected. They're collaborating with Connect One. Everybody, I think, knows Giles, knows projects that Connect One's done for the town, like the Midland Park, and obviously they're working with Habitat Humanity on the project there, and worked a lot with us on the river master plan. So we thought CTA kind of had the national presence, a mountain planning firm with a lot of master planning experience, but they combining that with a local firm that we thought could, make sure that we kind of get what we expected, and kind of a good test of whether we're addressing the community goals. We had in our proposal, I have a slide if you want to see it, kind of the range of costs that we had with all the proposals. And I want to say every one of the proposals was really good. I mean, there wasn't anybody that we felt couldn't do the firm. We really felt really comfortable that this was the firm that we wanted to go with. Their proposal, and I think this was part of the discussion when the P&Z and the town council is here, is like, why can't we do both? The high aspiration plan, we should be doing that. When you look at those numbers for this proposal, it came out to $228,000. I think everybody knows we budgeted $200,000. We've had discussions with Wayne Freeman. He is the principal in charge at CTA. So we've had discussions with him. We have kind of a plan to bring it down to the 200,000. We just have to check in with Ryan and make sure everything kind of fits with that. There's a lot of different ways of citizen participation that they're proposing, and so I'll offer Giles an opportunity to say something, but again, we're kind of just looking for a motion to select CTA, the CTA team, and to kind of move forward with this. So Giles, you want to add anything real briefly?
Yeah, I mean, we've Connect One started in Basalt. It's been here for 10 years. Basalt's been absolutely terrific to us, and it's our home. And we've actually just closed on an office space in Willits. We're now anchored and glued to Basalt. We love this town, and we're so appreciative of the opportunities you give us and through the RFP process. CTA approached us, and this was a winning combination from day one. We love to have fun. We love to engage the community. We feel like we're very strong at engaging the community and the Basalt community. And we thoroughly look forward to working on the new master plan for Basalt. And we feel like we're going to bring a whole new level of energy and citizen participation. I know the citizens here are probably a little burnt out, and we're hoping to spark many, many fires to, not literally, obviously, because of the, but some excitement back into the citizen community. And we're absolutely thrilled that you've chosen us for this project. So thank you.
Anyone?
When do you get started?
Jen?
How do we get started?
When?
We
If
started
selected.
in 2010.
No, I'm talking about in the master planning process.
When do we get started?
How would you expect to roll it out?
Well, we're actually starting hopefully as soon as we can. We have it in our schedule to be going, and really we want to get the word out on the street and work with the PR group to say there's a new master plan process afoot, and get ready because we're coming. So we're going to give people a little bit of time to let them know that this is coming down their corridor, and we're going to be working with your, I think, PR studio to help with that, and launch this exciting new endeavor. Yeah. So we're going to get the word out. That's the first thing we're going to be doing. Yeah.
I just love to express gratitude to the committee, doing full day of interviewing firms. That's some really heavy lifting for a very important project that we're undertaking. I think we may be sitting around a table, but inside I am jumping up and down and skipping around, and this is definitely a legacy project that is going to be undertaken. And so I'm all about invitations and setting something forth with a positive intention. And so may this be very clarifying and energizing and a very peaceful process.
Beautifully said.
Great.
Anyone else for a motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve CTA as the firm to complete the master plan and direct staff to negotiate contract.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
That's easy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
indeed.
Looking
We're
forward to it.
seeing you guys
Yeah,
we're
again very
excited.
soon.
It is cool.
Yeah, someone,
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, prior to entering the exec session, I have two things. One, I know that Jen may wish to disclose a potential conflict of interest with respect to the discussion on the Shining Mountain Way property. And then my second note was that the subject matter of the second executive session for the purposes of discussing with me related to taper restrictions, I wanted to clarify that it is taper restrictions with respect to the town's cigarette tax, so we'll want to include that in the language of the motion.
I am going to recuse myself due to connection to an entity with the Shining Mountain property.
have a good night.
I'll be waiting.
Oh, you
Which
wanna-
one?
We'll
Give me
get you
first.
when it's time to talk about the
Great.
taper stuff.
Do I need to say the numbers? I know
You do.
said- Do I need to say the numbers though for A, and then do I need to say the numbers again, A and B? Because I know you said there was an A and B.
Right.
Yeah, just say the whole thing and then just say.
Can I say 4A, 4B? Or do I have to say 2?
I'll go ahead and read it, and then somebody can say so moved. How about that? Does that sound good? Okay. I'll just do it the way I'll. So the proposed motion would be for town council to enter an exec session for the purposes of discussing the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, sale of property interests in accordance with CRS 246424A, more specifically to discuss the Shining Mountain Way property, and for a conference with the town attorney for purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions under CRS 246424B with respect to taper restrictions on the town's cigarette tax.
Motion what our town lawyer just said.
Your second?
Second.
Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And will this session be recorded, sir?
Yes, the first part.
Okay,
So, let me change tapes, please. But Ryan, grassroots run. Gotta wait until now. About to go have second.
It's always awesome sitting next
Well, aren't we gonna turn it off, though?
We need to turn it all off.
I'm gonna go get my.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, yeah, do the